Hi, I'm Karen. Welcome to my channel. Today, I want to share my adventures at Summer Mod Camp. This is a VR to Erin, the Witch of Saturn. When I saw Erin's introduction video for this tag, I watched it because I think it's fun to see how other people mod their decks. I am not at all artsy craftsy, or at least I didn't used to be. So modding a deck was not even on my radar. But then I watched Jack at Jack Greenwood Tarot and his mod video. Jack has such a calm, relaxed attitude toward modding decks. In that video, he said that he didn't worry about mistakes because his decks aren't precious to him. I knew right away what he meant by that. I love my decks, but they're not precious objects to be displayed on a shelf. They are my spiritual tools that I use in my practice. I actually like to see wear and tear on my decks because that means I'm using them in the way that I should. Anyway, I spent a couple of days thinking about what Jack said, and I decided to try some deck mods. To be clear, I did not, nor will I ever, cut one of my decks. I know my limitations, but I did end up having a lot of fun with Summer Mod Camp, and I want to show you what I did. So let's get started. The first deck mod that I did, I've actually shared a couple of times on my channel. This is the Familiar Field Oracle, and they have some of the most beautiful backs in my collection, in my opinion. But the fronts seem just a little dull, maybe flat. And I wanted to tie in the backs and the fronts a little more and maybe add some depth to the edges to help the fronts not seem so flat. So I chose a color that went with some of these grays here in the middle. Here's what I ended up with, and I love it. I think it really showcases those beautiful backs, and there wasn't really bleed through on the fronts as much as you can kind of see a little depth there from that gray edging that I think really adds something to the deck itself, to the fronts of the cards. I think that they look more interesting now, not as flat. The artwork is very simple, and I love that, but at the same time, it just seemed a little blah with the white edges. So I did this, and I was very happy with how it came out, and that gave me some confidence to keep going. So then the next deck that I edged was this one. This is Witch Sisters Tarot. I think I've shared this one also on the channel. I decided to go with a brown that complements the browns in here. I've figured out in this process that it's really hard to match this background color on the backs because, for one thing, there's some gradient in the shades, and for another thing, it's really hard if you don't have the exact color to make it look good. So I ended up going with most of mine with a different color somewhere either in here or that complemented the background, one of the two. But this one I ended up with this beautiful brown. It's rich and deep, and I think that that matches the deep energy of this deck. This is, I've talked about in a tag video I did. This is my witchiest deck for sure. It's my only witchy deck, but it's also my most fierce deck. And I feel like those white edges weren't doing it any justice, and the brown brings out some of that fierce energy that it carries. So I was thrilled with that one too. The next deck that I edged was this one. This is Earth Wisdom Oracle. And I chose this beautiful rich green for the edges of this one. It's not exactly a match for the colors in here, but for one thing, I didn't have exactly a match. And for another thing, I just felt like this color ties in the whole look of the backs and a lot of that rich green that's in so many of these cards. I feel like it just really goes well with those. How do you do this here? Those rich greens that are in so many cards throughout this deck. I'm really happy with it. I feel like this color ties in with the energy of this deck, and it's just beautiful. I started gaining a lot of confidence with this one, with making choices of colors that may not be what someone else would choose, but that feel like the color that should be on the deck to me. So that's what I went with. Then the next deck I decided to edge was this one. This is Midnight Magic. And I had considered starting with this deck because I figured it was going to be the easiest to edge, and it was, until it wasn't. I'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to edge it in black, and it has black borders on the front and the back. So I figured I really couldn't go wrong edging this one. But I did. There was a lesson learned from this one. I edged it all in black. It was really pretty. Then I put it away, and I got it out the next morning to look at it, and there were white spots everywhere, white streaks where the edging had worn off. Lesson learned, make sure your edges are completely dry. Even if you think they're dry, let it set out for a while before you put it back in its box, or you'll end up having to go back over it again and re-edging it, which is what I had to do with this one. But I love it now. It's beautiful, and it was worth the extra effort. Then my next project was not an edging, it was soaping. In that first video, Erin mentioned soaping a deck, and I had never heard of that. She referenced Honey Lou's video on soaping in her description box, so I went there and I watched the video, and I thought, well, even I can do that, I believe. And I knew I had several decks that I wanted to soap because they just clumped together horribly, and as much as I love the decks, it was an irritant. So this was the first one I wanted to edge. This is Sacred Destiny Oracle, my first deck of any kind. And I am so attached to this deck, but it drove me crazy. There was no way to shuffle it. You couldn't fan it. It would just clump into pieces about like this. What I ended up doing to try to use it is I would just put it on the floor and just smush it all over the place and then just pull cards that way, because there was no other way I could figure out to do it. There was no shuffle, there was no fanning, there was nothing like that. But now, look at this. No sticking. I don't know why I'm just now finding it out about soaping, but it is magical. I love it. I can fan, look at that. Look at that. And I soaped the fronts and the backs. I love these backs, I always did, but they just were kind of faded looking, and the soap with its little extra sheen it gave a depth to the color, I believe. It looks to me definitely like the colors are richer after I soaped it. They were already rich on the front, so it's hard to tell any difference, but on the back I can definitely tell, and I just can't believe how putting a little bit of soap on the cards and then rubbing it off can fix that sticking problem so perfectly. So I'm really happy with that. Then the next one was another cautionary tale. This is my Bonestone and Earth Flesh Tarot, one of my favorite decks, a new love in my collection. And I wanted to pick a color that was kind of a blend of the colors here. I first thought I wanted to use one of these blues, and there was nothing really close, and the ones that were close just didn't look right with these colors in the background here. So I wanted to go with something like this. And I found the color and I started to use it, and it was so splotchy everywhere. I could not get the splotchy parts filled in. But I realized I actually like the look. I feel like it fits with these swirls on the front. and so I'm not mad about it. I did learn the lesson that I need to find a way to test the color on similar cardstock before I start to edge, because you can end up with this if it is a cardstock that doesn't take well to your markers or whatever you're using to edge. And this one, it didn't take well, but I'm actually probably happier with it because it has that worn, distressed look that I didn't intend to do, but I actually love for this deck, and the energy of this deck, I think it's perfect. So I'm not complaining about it. It just is a lesson for the future. If I don't have an extra card from a particular deck, I guess what I'll have to do is go through all the extra cards that I have saved and find the closest cardstock to that deck, or maybe one that's from the same maker. This one is published by Blue Angel. I don't know if their cardstock doesn't take well, if it was just this deck, if it was my markers and this deck combined. I don't know, but I learned my lesson about testing it out before I just dive in and start edging. I still love it. I still think it's gorgeous. I actually probably like it better than if it had come out nice and smooth and even, but if it had been another deck, that might not be the story. So lesson learned there. Then my last mod project was this, the Muse Tarot. And I left it in the box because this one has another cautionary tale. If you are edging your decks, it doesn't seem like that layer of color that you're putting around the edges is going to add any thickness to the card. And it isn't noticeable, I'm sure, in a handful of cards, but after 78 cards, it makes a difference. I learned that the hard way. If your deck fits tightly in its box, you're going to have a problem like this. Can you see that? The deck and the box and the book don't fit squarely in the box anymore. They are too thick now. Normally, I keep my book underneath my cards. So after I finished edging this one, and I also soaked this one, I'll get to that in a minute, but after I finished, I put everything away in the box. I put the deck in the bottom, the book in the bottom, and I put these on top, and I noticed it was tight, but I didn't realize what was going to happen. I bent this card. I don't know if you can see it in the lighting, but it has a crease right here. It's bent pretty bad on this end. There, I think the light's picking that up. This is my Four of Voices, which is the Four of Swords. And it now has a big crease in the middle of what could be my favorite deck. It's one of my very favorite, if not my favorite. And that makes me sad, but at the same time, I can still use it, obviously. And lesson learned, when you're edging and it's a tight box, make sure to put the book on top or to move it to a bag or to do something different so you don't end up damaging your cards like I did. Okay, let's get to the mod. I edged this one in this beautiful green. Again, I didn't have any success matching anything with this because there are multiple amounts of gradient colors in this. And I matched pretty close to this deepest color here. It still has that blue-green tint that this back has. And I just think it's gorgeous. I think it blends perfectly. One of the things I loved about this is the edging came out kind of transparent. So if you turn it a certain way, you can see where the pattern on the front carries over into the edges. And I'd never really noticed that because until I edged it, it wasn't evident. But now it is, and I just think that's really cool where you can see that. After I edged this one, I let it dry and then I soaked it because this one also clumped together horribly. And now it doesn't. I heard someone, I'm not sure if it was Erin or someone else talking about modding their decks. And they said if you're going to soap and edge first, because if you soap first, some of the soap may get onto the sides and keep the edging from sticking. So I did that. I edged first, I let it get good and dry. And then I soaked it so that it does no longer clump. It doesn't fan as beautifully as Sacred Destiny, but it definitely fans a lot better than it did, and it doesn't clump when I try to do this. I can get individual cards. There's no clumping. It slides perfectly in my hands, and yeah, I can get a lot more pleasure out of pulling my cards from the deck now. Okay, that's it. That was my summer mod camp. And for me, that was a lot, considering I had never done any mod of any kind. I edged 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decks, and I soaped 2, which is really good for me. I'm gonna keep right on doing this because I had a lot of fun with it. I have other decks that I want to soap. I have other decks that I want to edge. If you have any questions about what I did or how I did it, you can ask me down below, but there are people with far more experience than me who've done edging and soaping and a lot more advanced mods than what I've done. I just wanted to share. I wanted to participate in some summer mod camp. For me, this was a big deal. It gave me a lot of confidence in my creative abilities when I sit down and try to do it. So I'm really happy. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please let me know down below. And if you did a video in Summer Mod Camp, make sure you let me know that so I can go and watch yours. Bye for now.